Okay, now we're going to cross to Rosewell, Georgia to talk about the story of Andrew Wordy's terrorized to death, quite literally, by government harassment and abuse. Of course, most of you probably know the story by now. A man who just wanted to raise chickens on his own land, intimidated, hunted down by local bureaucrats to the point where his land was declared a green zone and the property was raided. And of course, the tragic conclusion was an explosion in the house, and Wordy's was later found dead. And we're joined now by Infowars reporter Darrin McBreen on the ground there in Rosewell, Georgia. Darrin, just tell us who you've been talking to today. I believe you were escorted out of City Hall by the police simply for trying to get some answers.
Well, just before we get started, just to make sure there's no mix-up, I want to prove to you, see that is my press pass. So I guess that is my legal documentation. I am now legit. Now we went to, I'm actually making fun of the Fulton Police Department. We tried to go to City Hall, and we were rejected immediately. As soon as we pulled up, attempted to walk in, we were met by the police department, who said we didn't have the proper credentials to enter City Hall. And before long, there was 3 police cars. They demanded our credentials, and we were told that we could not go in.
Even though you've got the press pass, you're there to ask some legitimate questions, and it's par for the course with the treatment that they've gave to this case at every point. Have you had a chance to talk to any of the neighbours and the residents down there to get a sentiment of what they feel about the tragic events that occurred at the end of last month?
You know, it's interesting that you asked that. We did talk to a few neighbors. Everybody seems very sympathetic to, Andrew. They all feel horrible. And the place is, there's a lot of traffic. Every car that goes by slows down. It's kind of a somber, quiet, place right now. I still think that the community, the shock is still here, and everybody's very saddened by what happened.
Did you have a chance to actually visit the house?
Yeah, we knocked on a few doors. We talked to a few neighbors. We're going to have a report on Monday, put that footage together. So we did manage to talk to some of them. And, he was very popular in the area. He, nobody had a problem with his chickens. He was called the Chicken Man, and lovingly so. They weren't making fun of him. He had, his share of chickens. He raised them since he was 10 years old. He provided the neighbors with eggs. I guess that's evil, so I don't know. The neighbors loved him, they miss him, and they're very saddened by what happened.
Well, that's a pretty big thing because, of course, we know one of the excuses these bureaucrats tried to deploy was the claim that his chicken farm was a nuisance to his neighbors, and if you've talked to them and they've said the opposite, then that's just another thing to disprove their claim against him. Another thing that I saw... Yeah, go ahead.
That's simply... Well, I was going to say that's simply not the case, at least to the neighbors we talked to in the immediate surrounding areas. They had no problem. They were all good friends, and like I said, he provided eggs. Do you know that he even took eggs on a regular basis to the local elementary school? He taught the children about, nature and the chickens, and and he liked these roosters, like the neighbors were saying, as like some people have pet dogs. The roosters and the chickens, he actually loved these animals. So he definitely was not, treating them bad or abusing them in any way. And he was up to all the codes. And, the guy ran a smooth operation. He was just simply harassed.
And we were talking to you before the interview. There's actually an article entitled "Sheriff, Wordy's Incident Could Have Been Avoided." And this is Fulton County Sheriff Ted Jackson, who said, quote, "This was ugly, it shouldn't have happened, and it didn't have to happen." And his office, the sheriff's office, actually refused to take part in the raid that led to Wordy's death. And also the Rosewell police refused to have any part of it. Well, this was the actual federal marshals. They were the only ones that would actually take on the job of raiding the house. Everybody else refused to do so. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting, and I just heard bits and pieces of that myself. I'm going to try to talk with Mr. Jackson, you said. Tomorrow we're definitely going to try to talk to him. But, yeah, it's looking more and more like a federal land grab. And, the Fulton Police Department, I did hear that there was several police officers that did not want to participate, so the county sheriffs had to go at it alone.
Yeah, I mean, this is the article makes it clear that there was a definite disagreement between the sheriffs, the police, and the feds there, and they're actually critical of the feds in this article. So that would be an excellent interview to get.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Just wondering, I mean, what's your sense? Are we actually going to see any legal retribution against some of these councillors whose behaviour? I saw the interview that Rob Dew did with Mike Adams the other day. He described it as a deliberate conspiracy to destroy Mr. Wordy's life. Is there any cause for legal retribution against these councillors who so blatantly harassed him into apparently taking his own life?
I would imagine there is going to be lawsuits, but, I'm only guessing. I do know this, that the city council is not interested in speaking with us. Obviously they had police come out immediately. Another interesting thing is when we left City Hall, we went back to Andrew's property, the police showed up immediately again, and also when we were at City Hall the first time, they knew that we were at the property because one of the police officers even mentioned, he said, you guys were at the Chicken Man's property today, weren't you? So the Fulton police, they're cooperating in some way with the city council. They wouldn't allow us on the City Hall grounds, for example, but I would imagine, I wouldn't be surprised one bit if there's lawsuits that are about to happen soon.
So we still have questions circulating about the exact circumstances of Mr. Wordy's death, and I believe you've actually got some quite interesting photographs which contradict the notion that the explosion that killed him occurred inside the house.
Well, yeah, I mean, we found a burn-up gas can. I think we took some pictures today, sent them to you guys. There was a gas can. The place... It was, you could tell that an explosion, windows were blown out, but it looks worse on the inside, let me tell you something, than it does on the outside. The whole place is burnt out on the inside. You could still smell the burnt wood, and, you could tell it was recent that it happened, but they also have a police line around some of the area and no trespassing signs everywhere as well.
So what's on the agenda before you wrap up? Who else do you plan to talk to?
Well, we would like to talk to some more of the neighbors. We may be able to speak with Andrew Wordy, his attorney, and we're going to try to go into City Hall and see why that the average American citizen, much less journalist, is unable to walk through City Hall and simply ask questions. We're going to find that out tomorrow for sure.
Okay, Darrin McBreen, we'll be hearing from you on the Alex Jones Show tomorrow. Thank you for joining us.
All right, thank you, Paul. Take care.